I want to start a petition to rename Hollow Knight to Getting Killed by Stupid Shit Simulator 2018. Pardon me if I'm a little more triggered than usual during this video, as this idea came to me from my latest Steel Soul attempt in which I managed to find all 3 dreamers, and then tripped and fell on a fucking tick-tick on the way up to the Hollow Knight boss fight and lost all my progress. But, nay, I hear the great ones of Hallownest call out to me through the temples. You need a break from this incessant trigger fest and all of this Steel Soul pressure. You need a way to relax yourself just for a bit before you get back into the game. You need the Amino app. Yeah, didn't think this would be a sponsorship, did you? Amino is an app with literally millions of communities for people to unite and discuss their fandoms, passions, and interests. And in the Hollow Knight Amino community, you can join thousands of other Hollow Knight players from around the world. You can join public chats to discuss and debate Hollow Knight lore, post original artwork of some of your favorite characters, browse the curated feed, take quizzes, vote in the polls, and that's like barely half of it. There's honestly so much you can do in the community, and it's a great place to connect and make friends with others who love the same things you do. If you haven't downloaded it yet and you need a reason why, well then we're also hosting a special Steam gift card giveaway valued at $50. To enter, download Amino, search for and join the Hollow Knight Amino, look for my account at TSF_Rusty and post on my wall the word enter. I'll be personally messaging the random winner at the end of next week so you can claim your prize. Anyways, continuing from where I left off before, found all 3 dreamers, misjudged a jump, face planted right into a tick-tick and killed myself and had to restart the whole thing. And then, despite all of my uninhibited rage and tiltedness, a beacon of inspiration hath shone through the crevices of my defeat, which has then manifested into this video idea. There's a certain code of law in Hollow Knight, a series of fundamental, unbroken laws dictated by only the highest of celestial beings that ensure the worst possible thing will happen to you at the most critical moment of your gameplay. A Murphy's Law of Hollow Knight, if you will. I present to you a draft of the 10 indisputable laws and rules of the Hollow Knight universe. Hollow Knight fans have demanded a boss rush mode for a while now, and that's because of one inarguable fact. These boss fights are fun as hell, literally all of them. Even the ones that kill you over and over again to the point where it urges you to do violence against your keyboard and any other computer peripheral you have within eyeshot of your desk. But when talking difficulty with another Hollow Knighter, everyone has a completely different breaking point. Aside from Nightmare King Grim pretty much being the largest bitch of the whole game, everything else just seems like a toss-up. I got my shit stomped in multiple times by the Mantis Lords during my first ever playthrough, and it was beginning to seem hopeless. There was just something about my playstyle that didn't mesh well with the boss fight, and if there's one experience that makes you feel completely demanned and made into Team Cherry's bitch, it's repeatedly getting your balls kicked in through your neck by a boss that everyone else thinks is just the easiest shit in the world. You'll realize that when you get to a certain point in the game, you've purchased all the necessary charms, items, done everything all the way from one side of the kingdom to the other, from unlocking benches to literally just throwing your savings into a fucking fountain. There's absolutely nothing left to do with your in-game geo, which segues me into the second law of Hollow Knight. Geo is worthless. Even without greed charms, you will still have more than enough geo at any given point in the game to purchase or unlock the item required to continue through to the rest of the game. But at the beginning of the game, you wouldn't expect that to be a problem, because there's such a shortage of geo lying around that you would break your back 10 times over if it meant you could save a couple bucks. And then, almost without realizing it, that hoarding habit sticks with you, and about 6 play hours later, you find yourself lugging around the entire US Treasury in your pockets with no way to get rid of it because you've already fucking bought everything. The path of pain is not something to piss about with. You need not lose your cool or get impatient, and you need to have master level concentration and a mentality just as strong. Otherwise, you're going to spend the entire run through becoming the game's bitch. Molten lava will spew from your ears, and you're gonna feel like inserting your fingers into a motorized winch and pulling the fucking lever. You will get tilted and impatient if you aren't careful. But if you're like me, and you spent at least 3 hours, possibly more, repeatedly throwing yourself at this obstacle course like you're headbutting a brick wall over and over again, feeling it give a little each time you do it, until finally you've conquered the wall, it breaks down in front of you, and now it's off to the ER because I'm pretty sure I've given myself an aneurysm. You'll notice as you walk away from the game, you'll almost have a PTSD sort of feeling, where your hands are still shaking minutes after you've completed it, your headspace is still in game mode, and the slightest noise of grinding metal makes you downright sick to your fucking stomach. I've heard of people dying like this before, before, and I personally resonate with this one because it's deceptively easy to do. You've just got done completely wasting a really hard dream nail boss, feeling absolutely untouchable as you're wiping your ass with its face, and then, my dear friend, you suddenly make the simple and extremely common mistake of immediately letting your guard down to anything else around you. It's time for a break, time to find a bench, but you've forgotten you have only one mask left. This slips your mind just as you dive left onto a ledge, and a dumbass Tick-Tick is sitting right there with a massive shit-eating grin on his face, waiting for you to cock up. And as you just look up and realize, you're on Steel Soul mode. And around this time, you've woven a grand tapestry of profanities and curse words that, as far as we know, is still flying in orbit somewhere over Lake Michigan. Rule 5. Fuck the primal aspids. Hollow Knight has a diverse catalog of different enemies to fight, and it's inevitable that you'll butt heads with at least a couple of them, and you just won't play well against them. Something about the way they move or attack will just completely short-circuit the neurons in your brain, resulting in you looking massively incapable of performing the simplest tasks. Everyone has that enemy. But the primal aspid, this fuck cheese right here, this is a rare breed of enemy whose sheer annoyance and difficulty to hit has been adapted and memified into Hollow Knight culture. The primal aspid is a next level nuisance, especially in Kingdom's Edge when you have to back up every time you hit them because they immediately counterattack with a cone spread projectile wide enough to blanket an elephant. I'd rather host a fireworks display inside my own asshole than ever have the displeasure of meeting one of these freakish fuzzy fuck butts for the rest of time. Rule 6. Your first death in Steel Soul is always embarrassing. You know what? I get it. Your first time attempting Steel Soul is usually not a good time. The stakes are higher than they've ever been, but you've played through it once, probably at least a couple or even a few times already without even touching Steel Soul. You know what the game looks like, and it's nothing different. But the pressure at some point may get to you, and the further you go into Hollow Nest, the more difficult it becomes managing that pressure and filtering out distractions and just concentrating on not dying. You're down to one mask, but that's perfectly fine because there's a bench in front of you, and up, down the fucking hole, and into the spike pit you go. You try and do everything you can to save it. You pause the game out of sheer reflex thinking it'll help something, but now you've made yourself angrier and more depressed because now you're just looking at your knight floating aimlessly in the air, knowing the end of your run is about a half second away, and there isn't shitting fuck you can do about it. Rule 7. In platforming challenges, you will always fail where it's the least convenient. The platforming element in Hollow Knight is probably one of the most stressful things I could ever imagine. It's designed perfectly to make your breathing heavy and your asshole to pucker up and slam shut like a cigar cutter. Platforming challenges, and this is especially true in the White Palace, can really get inside your head and force you to make really risky decisions and jumps that you normally wouldn't make with a clear head. But I'm getting tired of hearing the constant drone of grinding buzzsaws, the pricking and stabbing of the spears that cover just enough of an area for you not to be able to jump over them, and the pressure adds up. I lose my shit like Jesus just arrived. One risky jump at the very end of the section, and I'm diving headfirst into the oblivion below. But it isn't until you've died in that exact spot 5 times in a row that you realize there was a checkpoint just after that one spot waiting for you to get yourself unfucked and continue with the game. Rule 8. You will at one point find the urge to attempt dropping into the abyss without hitting any platforms on the way down. I know for an absolute fact I'm not the only one that's tried this. Ever get so damn bored or sidetracked beyond anything else in the game and just decide to go skydiving in the abyss? I'm not sure what even happened or what led up to it, but I just found a spontaneous urge to suddenly dive down into the abyss chasm and try not to hit any platforms on the way down. Seriously, go on, give it a try. It's hard as shit. There really should be hidden achievements for stuff like this, because the more I thought about it, the more impossible I kind of realized it was. And eventually, after a time, I had realized I wasted about 30 minutes just trying to find out a way to get to the bottom of the abyss without headbutting one of these low-budget, fuck-faced Tim Burton props on the way down. This is one law in here that might just be a little disputable, but if you find yourself needing to go to the abyss for any reason, just give it a try. This bit has to be appealing to someone other than myself because I've wasted way too much time trying it. Rule 9. You will beat the game 5 times and still not be completely sure that you found everything. Aside from the main quest line, Hollow Knight can get pretty confusing when you try to make sense of everything that's going on. Thing is, Team Cherry didn't really want to tell people they were incorrect about certain bits of side lore, when fans had pretty solid explanations for why their own lore interpretations made sense. All in all, it boils down to this. No one has a clue what the hell is going on outside the main quest, and you could easily beat the game 10 times over and still miss small details that you didn't think you looked over. It took me 7 playthroughs to finally realize that if you dicked around for long enough after beating the false knight, the object on the end of his mace would literally just grow legs and fuck off in the other direction like your knight just fanned an eggy fart into the room. I stood up and almost had to walk out of the room because I could barely interpret what the actual hell I just saw. But point is, even after you've scored every possible ending, chances are there's still an item or a scene or an NPC or something that you just somehow missed completely. Rule 10. Half the time spent in City of Tears will be you trying to figure out where the fuck you are. As we all know, Hollow Knight is one of those games that actually wants you to get lost, because that's where you discover the most rewards and get the most out of your playtime. The more lost you become, the more likely you are to find another bench or a station or a really cool item that can serve as a sort of checkpoint so you can come back to this area and get even more lost. Getting lost in the copious tunnels and ubiquitous cliffs of Hallownest is sort of how Hollow Knight wants you to play. But Jiminy Jesus motherfuck with a side of french fries, the City of Tears has got to be the most convoluted, head-splitting, mind-aching labyrinth of tunnels that bend around back and forth and eventually end up traveling up their own asses back to where you started like true Dark Souls fashion. I spent a good 2 hours of my gameplay humping the ceiling trying to figure out how I'm supposed to get to one of the 3 dreamers, but for whatever reason, I couldn't figure it out. The navigation of this city was just too much for my old, hamster-sized, attention-deficient little brain. The City of Tears is probably my favorite area in the whole game, and it's also a bitch of a mess. If it's your first time, just a forewarning, get ready for your head to be buried into that map like you're planning a fucking splunking excursion, and don't plan on taking it out until you can walk the entire kingdom frontwards, backwards, and on stilts. Enclosed are the following 10 unbreakable laws and experiences of Hollow Knight. I've traveled all around the world conferencing with expert scientists at the top of their industry, and we have found these laws to be fundamentally and objectively irrefutable. However, science is always changing, so if you're qualified to propose a small addendum to the list, we might consider your contribution. I'm just kidding. Surely plenty of people have a number 11 for us, so please go nuts and tell me one of your fundamental Hollow Knight laws that you think should be added. Until then, thanks for tuning into The Forge, give the bell a ring, and I'll see you next time. Peace.